Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to another week of the Unforgettable Experiences live show. I am Phil Mershon, and I am thrilled to be here with my friend Terry Weaver. Terry, it's great to see you. Terry is the founder of the Thing Conference, which we're going to talk about later, but he is also a coach to many business creators, and he helps unleash the power of their inner calling. And it's really great the way he does that. But I'm excited to talk today about event community. So Terry, welcome to the show.
Man, welcome to my office this afternoon.
Yeah, your office is full of all kinds of fun, memorable things behind you. And we could probably spend an hour just talking about the story behind every one of those, but we're not going to. We'll just let them sit there and be an inspiration to this conversation.
From the event space, I will say this, that many of them are a memento from an experience that I had somewhere.
Oh,
And they're kind of my way of packing up a memory and experience to make sure, in honor of Phil Mershon today, that I don't forget that experience. Almost every one of them is tied to a trip or going to see something with someone else, and some of them are things that I've given away at live events. I can see my yellow axe handle behind me. When I did a live event during 2020, I gave everyone an axe and talked about which I'm not sure is the best idea from the event. But I talked about John Maxwell's rule of five, that if you just go and swing at something 5 times a day. So I sent home everybody, with a challenge to go swing at their thing every day.
I love that. I see one thing I will call out, and that is the top half of a Savannah banana. And we've both had an experience there where they create an experience that makes you want to go buy their stuff because it is so memorable and you do want to keep that memory alive. And I know you've taken the Thing community to two different games with the Savannah bananas.
And I literally keep a banana ball on my desk. I've got a little TV set over on the other side of the office where I have a signed one from Jesse, the founder of the bananas. But I keep this here to remind me that it doesn't have to be the same as everybody else. It literally just sits on my desk.
That's one thing I love about you, Terry, is that you take things that are ordinary and you give life and meaning to them. I've got sitting here on my desk two things that one of which you gave me, one of which your co-facilitator Jennifer Street gave, which one was this little brain squishy ball to remember that our brains are pliable and flexible and can continue to learn and adapt no matter what's going on. And then I've also got this other thing on my desk, a little tiny etch sketch, reminding me to let my inner child play and draw things and make things throughout the day. So I think there's something that you're doing there. I love the way that you're attaching a memory to something physical. And there's something powerful in that keeps those memories alive. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, one of my favorite leaders is a guy by the name of Andy Stanley. And Andy says that if it's memorable, it's portable. And if it's portable, it's memorable. And so those are kind of my ways to take an idea and make it portable.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something every event organizer can do, whether you give an axe away or something specific that is like the memento for everyone, or inviting people to create their own. Have you ever done that? Inviting people to create their own memento?
Yeah, we did friendship bracelets, and we talked about, we had one of the speakers had kind of a bit of a Taylor Swift moment. Here we go. Well, I think it's just me live now. I think we've lost.
No, I'm here. I'm letting you be featured.
Oh, you threw me off, Phil. You threw me off. You may want to turn my mic down a little bit on your end if you can do that, because I'm getting texts that were echoey.
We may need to turn that echo cancellation back on for the conversation, and then I'll turn it off for when I play some music. See if that makes a difference, if you're getting any texts about that.
Yeah, see if that helps. Yeah, I mean,
All
I
right.
think that, I always use the example, man, of like, I did a youth camp years ago, and I talked about how sometimes we flip the things we learn off when we leave the building, like a light
Mm,
switch, and I kind of made the tie in to this youth group that, their faith was like a light switch. And I remember like literally being in the Atlanta airport on a layover on dreaded Delta Airlines. And because if you fly Delta, you end up in Atlanta for some reason. And some kid, and it had been like 10 years, like Terry Weaver, Terry Weaver. I'm like, who was stalking me in the Atlanta airport? And it was this kid to tell me that, man, I can't ever look at a light switch without thinking of you and the story that you told us about
mm.
how to make sure we keep it on and not just have it be something that we turn off when we leave the building. And it was in that moment that I just decided that I was never going to not use objects and things that are kind of fun and goofy. And I show up at a, I know when we did the event together that, when you got our list of our shopping list, it looked like to your, accounts accounting team that we were insane. Because it had, Legos and glue and all of these things, Play-Doh, but they were all things that actually allowed us to tell a story, and to create a space where people experience something different and fun, and we're stretched further than they might have been before.
Yeah. Well, you put us in a playful mindset, which made us open to new possibilities. And, you had, I don't know, 10 or 12 different things that you asked us to get. I forget how many, it was a bunch. And every one of them probably connected differently to different people in the audience. Those who didn't think they were an artist probably didn't try those, but everybody tried the Legos. And it was one of the most profound exercises we've done as a company. And we all took home a piece of Lego. And I'm trying to find mine because it's usually sitting here on my desk, but it might have got knocked off recently. But so yeah, I love the intentionality behind it. I love that there is a memory, and most of us sitting in our offices have a memory for why we put things on the walls, on the shelves, in the room. But the fact that you're trying to create a connection, a memory to a significant event in your life, whether it's a personal trip or a business event, which this show is all about business events and how do we create memories that lead to change. That's like the tagline is making moments matter. So we want to make moments that matter, but if you want to make them last, then you need to do something that makes them memorable, which is what you're talking about. So I love that
And
thoughtfulness.
Phil, even with like your idea of like your book Unforgettable, right? And sometimes to make sure people don't forget make sure that there's a memory that's brought from the event.
Mm,
Sometimes you might have to take people out of their comfort zone and risk them being uncomfortable for a moment to be able to create a moment and experience that they won't ever forget. And I think we've all been at live events when some speaker did something that had us get up and stretch or touch our nose or had us do an activity, or you know someone like John Maxwell is like, tell your neighbor they look good today, whatever those things. Sometimes those things don't always like connect with everybody, but I try to go with the rule of one, man, that if I can connect with one person,
mm.
and that if it's meaningful for one person, then it's important for me to do it. Now obviously you want to try to connect with as many people in the room as you can. um I had an experience last night where we went to a live event, which happened to be a concert, and I intentionally sat on the back row, which is not something like I bought tickets on the back row. Now, granted, it was the Ryman Auditorium,
Mm.
which if you've never been in the Ryman Auditorium, it's where the home of the Grand Ole Opry. It's 130 years old. They call it the Mother Church, and I mean, it's the place where everyone from Sinatra to Bruce Springsteen to Johnny Cash, to Willie Nelson to literally every country artist, you know, you look at the wall of significant shows in there, and it's pretty much there's no one that's excluded. Um, And we went and I sat on the back row, and I was reminded that so much of what we do on the stage, we forget the people in the back row. Because most of the time, if you and I are at an event, we're either going to be on a stage or we're going to be sitting near the front because we need to get to the stage.
Right.
And I would encourage you, if you create event experiences, to the next time you go to a live event, and maybe even your own event if you can, to experience it from the back row. And because if you can't reach the person on the back row, you've not succeeded. If you can't get them involved. And it's interesting because in this case, what made me think about it was the opening artist. And this was a kind of event where everybody that was going there was kind of going there to sing songs, and mostly songs they knew. And as the opening artist, no one's going to know you or your songs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy didn't even tell us his name. And he just went right into one of his new hit songs. Which in that case, he probably should have done a cover that everybody already knew. Even if it was just an a cappella moment. And I learned this. I remember watching the artist Her, Her, and she opened for Coldplay. And I remember her being on that stage and her playing, a Prince cover and a Lenny Kravitz cover, and like 3 or 4. And I was Leslie and I, my wife and I, were talking about this coming back from the concert. I was like, "Do you remember that concert?" She's like, "Oh yeah, she was incredible." We talked about her leaving the venue as much as we did Coldplay. And I said, what you probably didn't know because you weren't paying attention was like 3 weeks before we saw her, she had a backpack full of Grammys that she won. So she should have had all of the ego that, everybody should know who she is. She's legit. But she was well aware that audience didn't know who she was. And sometimes in order to make something memorable, we have to make someone care about what we're doing. In the events, a lot of the events that you do, and I do, that a lot of times, sometimes they choose to be there, but sometimes they've been told by someone else they need to be there. Their boss told them, or someone on their team told them, "Hey man, you really need to go to this. This is a good event." And sometimes they may have not wanted to be there. And so, I think it's super important to just to be aware of that, and to be aware of the fact that sometimes we have to go out of our way to make sure that what we're doing on the stage, and even really before people get in the room, to connect everybody to the experience that's about to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think it does start before they ever get in the room. Now, concerts are somewhat different than an educational event, but I think we still can make someone feel like they are part of the experience when they walk in the building. And from the parking lot, even through the doors, into the lobby, into whatever meeting room. And Ryman's huge, I think. I've not been there, but it appears like it's huge. But if you're in the back row, you're trying to slip in and be invisible, which a lot of times people sit in the back row either because they've got, their dad was a cop, they're a cop, they want to have a view of the whole room, or because they don't want to be in the front. Actually, I was at church on Sunday, and there was a guy out in the lobby waiting to come in because the music was too loud. And I said, "Well, there's plenty of seats up front." He's like, "Well, I'm a back row guy. My last name's W. I've always been in the back." So I don't want to go up front. So, but I think, when we're at events, we have to appreciate that. And I remember at Social Media Marketing World one year, because I'm always on stage, I'm playing, I'm emceeing, I'm sitting in the front row. I decided to go to the back, and it was a completely different experience in the back half of the room. Sound wise, it was different. You just didn't feel as connected to what was happening up on the stage because it was so far away. So I think your point is really well taken, that we've got to think about every room in the building, or every seat in the room. And then also, how do we make people feel part of the community, which that's what we're here to talk about today, is community. How do we build community online and offline? And how do we build bridges between those things? So I love that you used that as a starting point to our conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting when you think about that because part of getting people in the community, especially at like, I'll even say this about your team is when you guys created even an event like for me, your people went out of your way to make me feel included in the experience.
Mm. Mm.
Um, Now, it wasn't really the guys on your team. Um, it was the ladies who invited me to the face mask party or
Right.
whatever.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
I went out of my way because I wanted to know everything I could know about your community and like what they were doing and how during our time together, because you had invited me to come and facilitate an experience for you guys. I wanted to know, and it was very interesting to watch just how much their thinking is of how can we bring people in
Mm.
to the experience? How can we create something that doesn't make anyone feel like an outsider? Because so often, when we talk about communities and events, so often when you show up at an event, it's really easy if you're not part of the in crowd or the clique to feel like you've showed up at someone else's family reunion
Right.
and you're not and you weren't invited. You didn't let people know. And sometimes events do this when they do, special, you know, oh yeah, though everybody wears white on Wednesday at the event, or if those messages don't get out to everybody, it's really easy for people to feel excluded. Oh yeah, the welcome party's '90s theme this year. So everybody knows how to come and how to show up. It's super important that we go out of our way to make sure that we've shared how to show up, how to create an experience where people know how to know what's actually happening and what's going on and how they should show up because people tend to look at the other people in the room for to model what they should do when they get there.
Right. What are
They're
some
looking
things that you've done at the thing that help people feel welcome, whether it's their first time or they've been coming for all the years of the thing?
I think it's something you constantly look at. The thing is a bit smaller of an event. We're in a more intimate space. So I try to reach out to key people and say, "Hey, make sure that guy feels welcome today." I reach to my inner core. I think when you look at an event, there's always like this core group of people that keep the event, that are the spirit, they're the heartbeat of the event.
Mhm.
They're often people who are leading breakouts or, um, we're actually doing a lot of different things this year because the value of events continues to shift more and more off the stage.
Mm. Mhm.
And that's not to say that the stage doesn't matter. Um, there's two things you have to look at with an event. What will get people to come to an event and what will keep people coming back.
Mhm.
And community is definitely one of the things that keeps people coming back to events.
Right.
And the things, everyone kind of has one or two talks they always talk about. But for the most part, the things they're going to talk about are going to be the experiences they have. And so, we're looking at designing more and more experiences this year in our Orlando event and doing things a little different. For the most part, we're a one room event. We don't have a lot of breakouts. We have a pre-conference. We have some, a VIP day, and we spend a day in the Disney parks with folks, which not a bad way to start an event. And then we do some breakouts in the morning before the main thing. But for the most part, once the conference starts on Friday and goes through the weekend, you know, once we kind of drop the hammer, we're in the room together. And um, for us, one of the things we've chosen not to do is not to have a green room. Because it's really easy when there is a green room as a speaker to find yourself there. And so we don't have we try to blur our lines between who's attending, who's on stage. And that's that can be a very unpopular opinion. As someone who goes and speaks at a lot of conferences, it can be exhausting. But I know it's very important to our people. It's something they want. It's something they share about in their endorsement quotes of the event, and so we're very, very intentional about that.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Do you have a place for speakers who need to prepare themselves for their talk? So green rooms could be an escape room, and I'm with you on that. We don't want a place where speakers just disappear and never engage. But there's a legitimate need. Hey, I need an hour to just kind of get my brain in gear for my talk. How do you serve that need?
I mean, I ask all my speakers to stay in the host hotel, so they're an elevator or a ride away from their hotel room.
Gotcha. Okay. So
You
the
know,
event is in the same space
it's in
as
the same
hotel
space. It's
rooms.
not like we're not in a convention center. We're in a hotel ballroom
Okay,
for
that
Orlando.
helps for sure. Yeah.
And I get that, but I think that most speakers don't put enough priority on what happens off the stage. I don't think they see that that's part of the value that they bring. I, you know, I, in fact, most speakers don't even understand the value to an event that they actually bring.
Mm.
It's one of the things speakers say to each other and say when they're booking. You know, I'm as someone who hosts a podcast, I know you've gotten these pitches. I'm going to bring so much value to your audience. It's like, yeah, but are you going to bring any value to me? Not just educationally, but like,
Mm,
are you going to bring the value of bringing your audience to my show?
mm,
Because if you're not doing that, if you're not, for me, if a speaker isn't sharing and inviting and telling, and it isn't actually bringing people to the event, they could have an A+ talk, and I probably wouldn't want them back again.
mm.
And I know that's difficult. It's hard to bring people to other people's events
Yeah.
because you don't know the costs involved. Um, but I think in order as events continue to evolve and change, we're very much in a changing economy. The investment that is required for people to get in a live event is significant. Events, as technology evolves, I think events are going to become more and more valuable to people. You can't, you can't fake a person um, in real life. The Sphere in Vegas has a robot, um, but she's not anywhere close to human interaction. And I think people want real. And I think those are the kind of things we're looking to create on purpose for people. Is what can we create that's real and authentic and
Mm,
personal that allows people to connect with one another. Because especially when someone like me, who's a coach, who has a lot of solutions for people, I think a lot of times we can be really scared that we think we need to be the only answer to their problem in the room.
mm,
You know, I've even had coaches tell me that, hey, if you're bringing too many of the wrong people in the room, you're going to encourage your people that they don't need you. I was like, really? Like, you want me to create a codependent situation where everybody needs me? And I get it. Like um, sometimes a great coach is like an emotional support animal, because that they're there. They're going to be there to guide you through a scary situation. You can call on them when you need them. Um, but also, I know there's a lot of smart people in the room, and I'm not afraid to put people that are smarter than me both on the stage and at the tables because it makes the event better. And so we're looking, we're kind of messing around with a kind of our version of table talks,
mhm.
but doing them kind of very much in our way, and then actually flipping the script in the middle of them. Um, we're not even going to share in advance what that means.
Okay, then I won't ask.
um, huh?
I won't ask then.
Well,
Mhm.
because I want to, because actually I know some of our people are watching, because I've gotten texts from them, because I want to create a space where there is a bit of wonder.
Mm.
I think that's one of our challenges. The more we do events, I've done some version of 13 of these. Now, some of them have been 1 days or in other cities. We've done 7 in Orlando, 7 of our annual event in Orlando. And, I think it's really easy for them to become, this is how it is. And so I try to shift and move things. So
Yeah.
the expectations don't become, bronze statues in the lobby. That this is how it is. And we try to do some new things. There are traditions we have. We have one that a lot of people talk about is my wife reads a book before every session, before every day, not before every session, but as we start our day, she reads a children's book.
Huh.
And we typically, because one of the reasons people are like, why do you do your event in Orlando? It's hot. It's Florida. One of the reasons I get people to that city is because there's something that shifts when you go to a place filled with whimsy and wonder.
Yeah.
And I want to activate in your head when you're at the thing this childlike wonder of what is possible. Because when you start to hit about the age of 5, the world starts to tell you all the things you can't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to take you back to the place where anything was possible. And I want to create an environment with everything we do, and some of it with intention, and some of it just by accident. Um, but but even the accidents happen with purpose because we've sort of created an expectation that there's space for this here.
Would another word for accident be serendipity, or do you mean something different by that?
Maybe serendipity. Surrey wants to chime in.
Surrey dippendy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what is the space being set up for. I mean, an example, because we're recording this right as the Olympics are going on. When they put the beach volleyball court at the base of the Eiffel Tower,
Mm-hmm.
they knew they were setting up something really, really special there. Now, what was going to happen on the sand and in those events, they didn't know. But they set this space and they created the environment where those, as Bob Ross would have called them, those happy little accidents can occur.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because one of the things about this Olympics, and we've had some friends over that have watched recently with us, because my wife trained with the U.S. Olympic coaches growing up in gymnastics. So gymnastics are like everything in our house. In fact, my day is still thrown up yesterday because the last 2 women's gymnastics events started at 5:30 a.m. yesterday, which is, if you know me, is not a time I'm normally out of bed. And then we went to didn't get home from the concert till almost midnight. And so what's been really, really interesting about the event is what the Olympics does in the margins. NBC does it fantastically. And we're not going to talk about the politics of the things that happened or any of that stuff. What I want to focus on is like what's really super powerful, I think, are really 2 things that happen. One, this storytelling about the people involved that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we tell enough stories at live events about our attendees and the amazing things that they're doing. We don't put the spotlight on them enough to share their stories and it hasn't just been the stories of the Simone Biles and the Noah Lyles and the Marchands of the Olympics, right? Like it's been this story of the swimmer that had never been in an Olympic swimming pool before, or the Ukrainian team, or the basketball team that had never played on a court before. And And those are really powerful stories that, if we're willing to go and find them, actually creates this deep meaning and these deep emotional connections to the event. One of my favorite people ever at live events is the very first event I went to was the National Youth Workers Convention, and a guy named Mike Yaconelli owned Youth Specialties and put on the night. And Mike was great about telling stories of like unsung heroes. And they would always find these guys that could never afford to come to fly to a big city, and they'd send a plane and a limo to pick them up, and they'd bring them, and they give them seats on the stage, and buy a bottle of wine for them for their hotel room, and like treat them like they were members of the royal family. And hey, when they'd be on the phone with them, this before video, they'd call them up live from the stage and say, hey, I don't know if you know this, but your family's packed your bags for you. There's a limo in the driveway, and your flight leaves in 20 minutes. And all of those kind of experiences. And the other thing I think that the Olympics has done an amazing job of is their partnership with their sponsors. Is all of the commercials have been super, I mean, not all of them, but the majority of them are ones that have been super, super meaningful. And they've had these amazing, a few of my favorites have been Edward Jones has this one about, finding your rich, and what if wealth was the magic that was in you. Tylenol has a great commercial about that sometimes greatness is painful. Toyota has a great series on starting your impossible. Dick's Sporting Goods might be one of my favorites that I keep forgetting. It's a commercial with a little girl who's probably like 5 or 6 that found out that she made the team. And their tagline is, we're here for your little moments that happen every day. Where the dreams are born.
Yeah.
And those are moments that man, if we could allow the people that are partnering with us to make live events possible, and to create really powerful moments that are not just, hey, this bowl of peanuts is brought to you by Kajabi. StreamYard presents the after party, but like these really deeply emotional moments. I think we're leaving something really special on the table. And so, hey, if you're an event sponsor and you want to sponsor events and are listening or watching, hey, the thing is always looking to partner with people who are looking to do something remarkable and something different. And, I'm sure Phil is too, for social media marketing world, of how can we do something beyond just throwing your name on a banner? And,
how do you become a partner in creating the memories? So you're not just handing out swag that people are going to give to the dog, give to the kid, or give to the circular file system. But it's actually sitting on your shelf as a memory because it's, attached, and there's something that happened that's really cool. I want to go back to what you're talking about with the Olympics and the way that the sportscasters are telling the stories. Last Saturday, there's a podcast I listened to where the host was interviewing one of the journalists that's on the ground, and she had interviewed her before the Olympics started because it was going to release in the middle of the 2 weeks. But she was talking about, and she's been to 34 Olympics, this journalist. Wow. And she was talking about one of her favorite parts is, you see the agenda when you're going and okay, I'm assigned to the gymnastics, event, or I'm assigned to this event or that event. But she said her favorite part of it is the unexpected assignments, the unexpected stories that happen in the seams. And the people like you were talking about, the people who have trained their entire life, and it just being there, and beginning to talk to those people, as well as the incredible history making events like, whether it's Marchand, or, by the way, Marchand is my name too, everyone. So I'm an Olympic hero. No, just kidding.
You're one of the great, Phil.
He's related to me like 4 or 5 centuries ago. So it's probably no blood left in the line.
You should be better at making croissants than you are, Phil.
I really should.
I don't know. I just assumed you probably weren't a good croissant maker.
I have never made one in my life, so you're correct. Other than maybe out of one of those tubes, maybe have done one of those
you push the side and it pops.
Pillsbury pop-up croissants. I probably have done that, but that's about as far as
Put
it
a
goes.
hot dog in the middle.
But anyway, back to the point was, I think those stories are so powerful, and I love watching athletes that you feel connected to, right? You feel like, oh, I can identify with what they've been through. You know, the Brazilian gal who won the floor, who had 3 ACL injuries, and so Simone and Jordan, bow down to her, not because they're worshiping her, but because they're honoring.
Yeah.
What it took to get there, and you feel invested. So
yeah, and I think
why
it's
not do it at our events, right? Why not create that connection with the people who you're sitting next to, realizing that every person who came to the thing or social media marketing world has a story of how they got to where they are in their career. And if we could celebrate those stories.
Celebrating that story.
Exactly.
Because that's what that moment was about when Andrade won the moment. And the only reason she won, and this is a great lesson. In fact, something we're going to talk about in our mastermind, my mastermind group tonight, is that morning, yesterday morning at the gymnastics, two things happened. Everybody that won because somebody else wasn't great that day.
Yeah, it's true.
And they were ready. They were ready for when greatness was available to them. And I loved those moments. The Italian girl that was just literally fell to the floor when she found out she won. And she knew that if Simone was on or Suni was on, she wasn't going to be at the podium.
Yeah.
And, I think I love, in fact, we're trying to plan a trip to go take Leslie to see the gymnastics team on their like kind of celebratory tour after the Olympics. And there's something about the culture of gymnastics that happened when you remember like these girls, and it's more prevalent with women's gymnastics than it is with men's, but they start training together at a really, really young age, sometimes like 4 years old, maybe younger than that. And some of these girls have been training together. And one of my favorite things was watching the footage of Simone, Jordan, and Rebecca Andrade all trained at the same gym in Spring, Texas. And those girls were moving and they knew their routine because they watched these women show up every day to learn these routines and experiences. And they knew every flip. They knew in fact, that's why Jordan was able to win the bronze yesterday, because they knew the routine so well. They knew that something wasn't scored properly. And it's what allowed her to win bronze. But man, there's something about creating in your event and in your online communities a culture of celebration, that just because you might not have won today, somebody did, and let's celebrate them. Let's learn to create a culture where we celebrate the people, and also celebrate the people that showed up. The goofy thing we do when it's like, who came the furthest? I spoke at an event and I gave away a copy of my book, and I decided I was gonna give away a free ticket to the thing. And I decided to do it based on who had just started, who had the newest business. Because I wanted to celebrate the person that had said yes and that had jumped into the pool, the most recently. And some guy was like, man, that is a weird thing to do as a speaker. He's like, you had the whole audience on your team because in the beginning, as soon as you got on the stage, you were celebrating somebody besides yourself. And I think there's something really, really powerful when we show up as leaders with just generosity and celebrating others as our mantra. And, you and I are both emotional dudes. I tried to rescue there from losing it too much on your podcast.
Oh, no,
because it's super emotional for me and obviously for you to watch people win and watch people that have put in the work. And winning isn't always a gold medal. For some people, winning was getting in the room. For a lot of the people that will show up at the thing, the win won't be what they learn. The win will be the fact that they believed in themselves to get on a plane and get in the room with other people that help, that love and care about them, and that are actually rooting for them. because so many times in our life, the Olympics remind us of this. So many times you're in a field, you're in a gym, you're at a basketball court, you're in a boxing ring, you're in your living room, you're learning a skill, you're doing a work. Overnight success happens on a lot of overnights. And there's just something about the fact that the world comes together and celebrates people that have pursued greatness. And that's what I think live events do. Whatever the event is about, whether it's social media, marketing world, dare say the Democratic or Republican national conventions, they're celebrating people moving towards something, whether you agree with what they're celebrating or if it's the National Association of Moms, right? They're people coming together with a common belief and a common goal to celebrate what makes them great together. And I think one of the things that I think every event wants to do is we want to create a space where people leave our event better.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I really want to make sure that I personally do is I want to make sure people leave being seen.
Yes.
And one of the ways I do that is to celebrate people. She's probably not listening, so I can spoil it. But like Liz Wilcox is someone in our community who's had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
And we're going to make sure we go out of our way to celebrate the heck out of her.
She's taking us to Applebee's, right?
Yeah, there's not an Applebee's. There's not an Applebee's nearby. The thing with Applebee's is they're getting harder and harder to find.
I love that.
So we may have to have some other burgers, but yeah, man, I think it's, you want to create a community where, in fact, we did something for Liz a few years ago for another reason. And someone who had never been to the event brought something to give her because they saw from the outside, they knew our ethos that well, even without having ever been in the room, that we celebrated people and what made them unique.
And just for the record, if those who are listening to this later or live don't know who Liz is, she was on the Survivor and made it to next to last person before the final three. And she's been a speaker at the thing. And so she had a very epic run to almost making the final three on this last.
She was in the final four. She made it to
final four. Yeah.
Yeah. She made it to she was on the final episode, but didn't make it. They basically, the first and second place get in, and then the third and fourth place person.
Oh, that's right. She lost to make fire.
So she had to make fire.
Yep.
Now we may also give her another chance to make fire. We'll see.
There you go. That'd be fun. That would be epic.
We'll give her a gold match.
There's another thing that happened at the Olympics that I think is something that's this common story we love to celebrate. And I don't know if you watched the steeplechase yesterday on Monday. What would that be? August 5th, the 3,000 kilometer steeplechase. I think it was the first heat. There was a Kenyan who got bumped by a Spanish guy, and he had to run around the water pit, and then he had to go back and jump it again. And it was the most amazing scene watching him lose all that time, probably a good 20, 30 seconds, and he made it up and almost still made the top 5. And so you're watching him and you can't help but want to root for the guy because you know that he got jostled and that shouldn't have happened. And then when they went and reviewed it and realized that he got jostled and, he should be given a chance, they gave him an extra spot that wasn't planned. We're all celebrating the guy. And I think that's another thing too, is it's not just celebrating the people that win, it's celebrating the people who got back up, who got knocked down. And maybe they didn't quite make it, but celebrating that story too. And I think event communities allow us to do that. When we sit at home and we watch things, we're not as invested. When you know the story of what someone had to overcome and they're willing to be vulnerable enough to let it be seen on TV or share it in a small circle at a table talk or whatever the case might be. I know you run a lot of masterminds. Those are places that tend to be safe for you to tell those stories. We want to root for the person who's still trying to get back in it.
Yeah.
Most people get knocked down and they don't make it back in. Like they would have given up, but this guy wasn't going to give up. And I was like, wow, I can't believe he's almost going to make it. I thought he would make it.
Yeah, and I think that happens, Phil, because just there's this spirit that you have. The Olympics create, there's what, 10,500 athletes, I think. But we celebrate what we can do together, not what we can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our whole world could learn a lot from the fact, that Ukraine, China, Iran, whatever they're letting Russia, how they're letting them participate, they're all on the same level field. Now, granted, there's still a little hostility. The Iranian team is out there with Israel. They're all, some of them literally came in on the same boat. And I think there's something just crazy about that mentality that I think that the coming together does for us. And the Olympics represent a global coming together. It also represents watching games that you forget existed, like handball.
Right.
I think wall climbing starts tomorrow, and break dancing is coming up. I haven't yet seen the break dancing.
Yeah, there's some fun things.
Before we're done, we all kind of laugh at those things like they're a little bit on the goofy side. And we just had the ESPN, the Ocho event that I always watch because it celebrates all the ridiculous sports. And I think that's another part of live events is embracing a little bit of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Is, and finding the places where you can make, because let's be honest, man, the idea of going and sitting in an overly cold ballroom, for a day, for 3 days, 4 days in a row, depending on your event, it, may not necessarily be the ideal situation for a lot of people. Even with your learning style. So the more ways that you can make that fun, the ways that you can add, the arts to your, we've had musicians and artists, and we're looking to add, we're always looking to add, things like free headshots for attendees, and just different things and experiences that add not just value but also like fun, and like making sure that people actually leave with something that they can use in their business.
So I want to ask you a question about that, because I had a conversation this morning, and a fellow event planner was telling me about this guy named Carl. And Carl is in real estate and a very successful real estate broker, I believe, has a whole brokerage. And he signs up for these high value masterminds. And she's watched him for years do what I'm about to describe. And he didn't used to do this, but he will come to the event. He'll sit in the back row and he'll take a lot of notes. And then at some point in the event, he'll fold his notebook up, put it in his briefcase, get up and leave. And she'll catch him on the way out. She did one of the first times she saw him doing this. And he says, well, I already got my one thing. I'm going back to the office to implement it. And she asked him more about it. And he said, well, in the early years of going to events, I'd come home with a whole notebook full of ideas. And I'd tell the team we need to do all these things. And they'd get overwhelmed and scared that he was going to an event. So now what he does is he stays at the event long enough to get his one big idea that they're going to implement into business for the next year. And he leaves as soon as he gets it. and I'm thinking two simultaneous thoughts of one is I love the focus and the clarity of finding your one thing.
Right.
But as an event organizer, I hate the idea that you left as soon as you got it, because what if everyone did that? Then I wouldn't have an event. Maybe that would be worth celebrating if it happened. If everyone got their one thing on day one by lunch, it's like, okay, y'all got your one thing. That's amazing. Now let's just have a party instead of leaving. I don't know. Like, what would you do if you had?
Oh man, I think one of the things I actually encourage people to do is to do that after every speaker.
Mm.
You know, before we go on to the next session, take a minute and write yourself. In fact, I think we're going to work it into the notebook this year.
Hmm.
Write your CTA, write the thing you're going to actually go and do. What is your do what does doing the thing look like for you?
Hmm.
And what is the one thing you need to take away and actually apply? Um, and for some people it may be nothing, and that's okay. It may be like, well, I never need to think about this again because I've got this figured out. Um, but for some people, um, I think I understand that. In fact, Diana Alt gave this talk. It's up on a clip of it's on the Instagram that she kind of did that with her approach that she came and made sure um, that she had like just limited action taking that she was going to do at the event. But I think the flip side of that is I would encourage Carl that, hey Carl, the big value of you being there is being in the room with people.
Hmm.
What might actually make that big idea even better is if you shared that big idea um, and made sure that like you left. So to go after the Bananas last year in Nashville was the first time we went to the Bananas game, and so um I gave everyone a foam yellow ball because they had them on Amazon. And actually, before we went to the Bananas game, because we did it after the thing last year, I had them write their one thing on the ball. I
Mm.
said, "What is the one thing that you want to be true about it?" And Shauna Bredesen, who teaches on community building, she brought her ball back this year.
Mm.
She was 9 months pregnant, speaking at the thing in June. Just had her little baby, and since the thing, and she said, I did my thing. I did my one thing. And so we actually took that moment to stop and celebrate it. I took a picture with her. I'll share the whole at length story because she came up and shared with me. She's like, I wanted you to know that you've created an environment where you're encouraging people and equipping people to actually do their thing.
Mm.
Um, and I think because you and I both go and speak at other people's events as part of our how we serve and how we actually make a living. Um, but I think that the uh, things that come from stage are just part of the story of a live event. And Carl, I think I challenge you that you're missing out on what you can learn from the amazing people that are event and the relationships and how those relationships could come back and bring you great value to you and your team later. And yeah, man, don't go home and overwhelm your team with 433 things you need to do. I think we all heard that moment when Gary Vee talked about years ago creating, 4,700 pieces of content and went, no, we're not doing that. We don't have that kind of time. Um, but I think it goes deeper than that. That we want to create a space where hopefully Carl would leave the event feeling supported and connected to the community. That Carl didn't feel like he had to go and do that alone.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming in as a shopper looking for his idea. He's not part of the community. That
Right.
wasn't even the point of the conversation I had with her, but you're absolutely right. Like he's missing out, and the event community is missing out on him. Like how
Yeah,
much
because
better.
Carl has something probably really significant to bring to the table that Carl.
Yeah,
I always say this, man, that the people that show up at live events looking to get something rather than give something are missing out.
yeah, mm,
And I think,
yeah,
you and I both have a faith background. I think that's the same thing that's where that idea probably started for me was like, if you're showing up at church
yeah,
to get something, you're going to be really disappointed.
mm,
But if you're looking to show up and add value, I mean, and that's the interesting thing about the culture. I mean, you and I both help people and we learn hacks and the latest and greatest. But at the end of the day, the Zig Ziglars of the world have been teaching for years, the Maxwells of the world, to even going back to the Napoleon Hills of the world that, bring more value than anybody else in the room and your business will be fine.
Yeah.
And, I think Carl's probably leaving a bunch of zeros on the table by just showing up and filling his notebook, not filling somebody else's. And
yeah.
And I think that's also part of the experience of creating live events, where you kind of want to create a space where Carl may not feel like this is the place for him. Because I don't really want Carl to come to the thing.
No, he wouldn't be a fit at the thing.
No, because Carl's not going to. Now, that's not to say that I couldn't fill Carl's notebook up for him. I probably could. But I want Carl to come and fill other people's notebooks. And man, that might be the hardest thing when you're trying to create event spaces, is knowing who they're not for.
Yeah, 100%.
And being okay with the fact that someone who's a taker isn't probably going to feel very welcome. Because, man, I worked with middle schoolers for years, and there's not a more honest segment of the population than middle schoolers. They will tell you what they're thinking. And it taught me a lot about authenticity. And, I think the one thing I'll say about my community is they can smell the takers from a mile. And when you show up with that kind of posture, and man, if you're generous, you're going to leave with so much. And I think that applies to every element of our lives, really, Phil. That if you show up looking to take from this world, man, you're probably going to leave the world pretty unhappy. But if you show up, I mean, that Simone, Jordan, and Rebecca moment of, man, what does it look like when you celebrate someone else besides yourself? What does it look like when you create an environment where that becomes the norm? And that happened because of the community that, I think Jordan asked Simone, like, hey, should we do this? Yeah, heck yeah, absolutely. And when we create those environments where we want to create the space for that and the space for authenticity, those are the things that people are going to go home and tell their entire audience about. I mean,
100%.
I'm sure your keynote speaker is going to have told, something awesome. I mean, no, what you want is transformation.
Yes.
You don't want, there's a pretty good chance you're going to bring your saxophone to the thing because you don't leave it. If the coolest thing that happened for somebody at the thing was you playing your saxophone, I've missed out on my job. Not to say that your saxophone isn't going to be fun and amazing and remarkable, but now if somebody leaves playing their saxophone, that's what I consider a win.
Yes, their metaphorical saxophone.
They're right. Like they're whatever that is for them. And if you giving them the permission to do that, allowed that to happen, play on, my friend. And so I think we sometimes forget, as people that end up on stages, that so much of what we do are to make sure the things that we care deeply about actually walk out the back door of the room and into the world.
Yeah.
And don't sit in conference notebooks, but actually sit and live in people's lives and businesses, and that the experiences and the communities that we create actually come alive with those ideas going and thriving. What a shame if you went to social media marketing world and all you learned about was the Facebook algorithm. and not just how to actually make your business come alive online and attract the people to your business that you want to love, help, and serve. You will have missed out.
100% agree. Terry, we need to bring this to a close. I'd love for you to just talk for a minute about The Thing. The Orlando version of it is coming up in November. People can get 10% off if they use the code Unforgettable, but just talk about it for a minute or so. And I'm going to get my saxophone ready because you've already kind of given me permission, and I'm going to give others permission to play their metaphorical saxophones as we close out. But talk about The Thing for a minute.
Well, man, the thing is this. The thing is an environment and a place. It's kind of events are tables. Events are tables that someone has set and invited you to take a seat. And what's at the table of The Thing is a community of people who believe in the power of what happens when we come together and say, I want to do this. And for someone, it may be this really deep, significant work. And for some, it may be this work that allows someone else to do deep, significant work. It may be something super practical that your thing is. Your thing may be on the boring side. And we definitely have, we have someone that's their job is they're a software auditor. And they should be retired and not coming to events, but they come every year. They're a member of the AARP and they're still coming to our event. And then we have people who are young and sitting at that same table. And when those people all get together and say, man, I have this thing I want to do and I don't want to do it alone, something significant happens. And so that's what we're doing November 8th, 9th, and 10th is the main event. On the 7th of November, we go to the Disney parks if you bought a VIP ticket. And then we do something called the VIP day, which is where we get together for dinner on Tuesday night. It's been all day Wednesday masterminding, and then maybe finding something really cool and fun to do on Disney property together that you may not know is available to do when you're in Orlando. And we try to go and do a fun experience together and just spend the days really working on your business and helping you build and grow your business and build and grow you. So, yeah, man, I'd love to have anyone that's listening right now come and join us in Orlando. They can go to The Thing Orlando, and if they use the code Unforgettable, they get 10% off.
Very cool. All right, we're going to my signature sign off, and so I'm going to play for a minute. Terry, give me 3 words that would sum up this conversation. One of them needs to be emotional.
Generosity, authenticity, and availability.
Generosity, authenticity, and availability. And I'm going to add celebration as my word because that's one word that stands out for me. Terry, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. This is conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I had no idea we were going to talk about the Olympics as much as we did, but it has been so fun. Folks, check out The Thing Orlando. Follow Terry Weaver. You can find him. What's the best way to find you? What platform do you prefer, Terry?
I'm at terryweaver.com, and I'm on Facebook at /Terry Weaver and Instagram at Terry the Weaver.
All right. Thank you again, Terry. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks, Phil.